of how you as consumers can protect yourself from people out there misrepresenting themselves as buyers agents. So Miriam, the first part of the topic, buying in changing times, as we've just been discussing, a whole lot has changed in the last 2 months, and it's making it a whole lot easier for, I guess, for you to operate as a buyer's agent, but also for for vendors to make sales, get successes at auctions, etc. What are you finding?
Well, definitely there's buyer sentiment in the marketplace is improving. You know, there's certainly a lot more people attending auctions. Interest rates have come down. Assessment rates for servicing have come down, so more people were qualifying for money than have previously. I know banks have been inundated with applications for loans. Mortgage brokers are just going back over their databases and touching base with clients who previously didn't qualify who might now. So there's a lot more activity in the marketplace. One of the biggest challenges, as I suppose we have at the moment, is a lack of adequate stock. I mean, stock is 30% down on the same time last year. And so one of the biggest issues is there are buyers out there, but there's not adequate stock to be buying. So that's in some instances causing a bit of a spike in prices and people overpaying at auctions or buying at auction and, competing substantially and in some instances overpaying to secure an outcome.
Yeah. In a previous discussion, you mentioned to me that many of the selling agents in Melbourne, at least, are desperately trying to talk vendors into bringing forward their plans to sell. Many of them perhaps planning to sell in the spring selling season, the so-called spring auction season.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, well, look, where they can, they're trying to get vendors to bring their properties forward because obviously if everyone's selling in spring, there's a lot more competition and there's a lot more for people to pick from. They might have 2 or 3 properties in their sites, and so there's not necessarily the same urgency to buy one if they've got a couple of others up their sleeve. Whereas now with a lack of stock, it's really putting vendors in a strong position where if they do list their property sooner rather than later, they've got the chances of getting, if it's a good property, a better result.
So right now we've got people in, say, the Melbourne market, I'm sure it's very similar in Sydney, rocking up to auctions and finding that because there's a shortage of stock and there's increasing numbers of buyers out there, finding it very competitive. And as you've just mentioned, perhaps overbidding, paying too much. What's your advice to those people in the current climate?
Look, it's really important that you do probably engage the help of a professional. I mean, I know instances where certainly the bank of mum and dad is stepping in to help kids. And the problem with that, when parents want to help their children, they tend to get a little bit competitive and can lose control on the day. And certainly some properties have gone for substantially over probably what that property is actually worth. And then there are issues with potential valuations and securing the lending that you need to be able to settle on the property. I've had an experience certainly where I was competing against a father-daughter team. And the father got carried away, and I could see the daughter's expression on her face was quite shocked as it appeared that her father had gone over her limit. And I got a call the following day. They secured and won the property at auction, but I got a call the following day saying, you know, was I interested in buying the property from them at my bid that came in under theirs because he had gone 20,000 over her limit. She couldn't get the money from the bank, and I declined the offer and offered $20,000 less than what I'd previously provided the day before. And nevertheless, the parents were forced to actually have to go guarantor on her loan and I think make equity available in their property because he got carried away, quite frankly. So there is a risk. Just because you've got a family member who might have bought property once before doesn't mean they know what they're doing, and it doesn't mean they're not emotionally attached, and it doesn't mean they won't lose control. So I would honestly suggest, even if you just engage a buyer's advocate to bid for you only, nothing else, just bid for you, it's worth the money.
Yeah. So that bidding service is one of the many ways that people can engage a buyer's advocate. But one of the problems, and we're going to touch on this when we do the full-blown webinar on the 21st of August, is that there are a lot of people out there calling themselves buyer's agents who actually aren't, and that's a clear and present danger for property buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've got an influx of inexperienced people coming into the marketplace who are licensed but have never worked in the industry, and they're calling themselves experts and they're calling themselves buyer's agents. You know, they've got slick marketing practices, but in reality, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't been properly trained. They don't have anyone supervising them. They don't have mentoring. So heaven help anyone who engages an advocate like that. because they're really practicing their job and learning on the job with your money. So we're going to talk about the sort of things that you need to be looking for when you're engaging a buyer's advocate. We're going to talk about the type of licensing that they need to have, extra qualifications that they might have, experience in the industry and the questions you need to ask, and the consequences of what happens if you're dealing with someone who's really got training wheels on and no actual experience in the industry beforehand. And then, of course, there are a lot of people who don't even understand that you need to be a licensed estate agent to transact in real estate. And you have to actually be fully licensed or an agent's rep under somebody else's license. So there are people out there calling themselves buyer agents, they're doing it part-time, and they're taking money illegally for a service that they just aren't licensed to be able to offer.
Okay, so you're touching on people who lack proper training, proper qualifications and experience, but there's another category of operator out there who are actually quite consciously and deliberately misrepresenting themselves as buyer's agents when they're actually marketers of real estate. They're getting kickbacks from developers and they're not disclosing that, and people are being duped. Paying fees to people who are then also getting kickbacks from developers whilst pretending to be buyer's agents. Yeah,
there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. So, you know, people attend seminars and edutainment events, and there's someone spruiking something up the front and offering, you know, urgent opportunities that if they don't sign up now, they'll miss out. So there's a whole industry that does that. And in fact, in my book, Property Prosperity, the introduction is all about the manner in which property is sold, the tricks and traps that people fall for, and the things they need to be aware of if they're going to be working with some sort of property advisor, the questions they need to ask to best protect themselves. So certainly it is a case whereby you know, there are project marketers out there who make it sound like they're working for the buyer, whereas in fact they're getting paid by the vendor. They're getting paid a commission or a marketing fee. And I know your standard traditional real estate agent who's got signatures on the bottom of his email saying that he's a vendor agent of the year and a buyer agent of the year, which is an internal marketing award apparently, but it absolutely is misleading and I think creates a lot of confusion when in reality those individuals are selling agents and they're nothing but selling agents. So to try and present as a buyer agent or a vendor agent as a result of internal marketing awards, I just think that's really misleading. So it's about consumers being aware of the ways that they're able to be misled and the questions they need to ask and the qualifications and licensing they need to ask for as well.
A lot of people who are buyers in Australia are actually people from other cultures who are maybe even recent arrivals or here working for a short period of time and don't know, they don't have the background of our culture to understand that what they're dealing with is not the norm and it isn't a real situation. And I spoke to somebody like that a few weeks ago who had been charged a $10,000 upfront fee by somebody who said they're a buyer's agent and was then trying to talk them into buying developer product off the plan. And when I asked the name of that operator, I instantly recognised them as someone who's a well-known, notorious marketeer of, but had been paid a fee up front by this unsuspecting foreign person now living in Australia, but also no doubt getting undisclosed kickbacks from developers. So that's a very dangerous situation for people who don't know.
Yeah, there are people out there that are double agents. You know, they're getting a marketing fee up front or a management fee. They don't necessarily call it a buyer's agent fee. They call it a management fee, and they're holding out their hand for 10 grand. And then they're actually selling them a property where they're getting a commission on it. And that's actually illegal. You know, you can't make money on both sides of the transaction. So that's happening illegally. And unfortunately, it's buyer beware. So the reason we do the webinars that we do, Terry, as you well know, is to try and educate consumers. The reason I wrote my book, Property Prosperity, is to try and educate and empower consumers so that they're aware of what goes on in the marketplace. And again, the questions they need to ask and the things they need to be aware of when they're engaging somebody to work for them, particularly if they are paying them a fee. So yes, double agents is a massive issue. Spruikers, you know, pretending that they're a property advisor when in fact it's sales advice, not property advice. People that say, well, I'll tell you what, you give me a buyer's agent fee of you know, X thousands of dollars, and I'll negotiate a discount on the property that I'm going to put you into that's off the plan, and I'll make sure that marketing fee is rebated back to you, so you'll actually be ahead of the game by the time you finish the property. Now, you know, technically, is that a buyer agent? Well, yes, I suppose it is technically, but if all they're doing is shoving you into an off the plan property anyway, and then it's an overpriced property because that marketing fee that's been built into it is being rebated back to the buyer, all that's happened is you've bought an overpriced off the plan property that you've effectively paid for and had that, you know, the price has been inflated, and then you've had that inflated marketing fee rebated back to you, and it sounds great, but often it probably isn't, and it's probably a crap property that won't grow in value either. So it's complex. You know, consumers just need to understand that buying real estate is one of the most risky and complex things you'll ever do in your life. It's not for the faint-hearted. There are so many ways to get it wrong, and people don't know what they don't know, which is why they don't know that they're getting it wrong, and then they find out it's too late, or they don't find out, or they don't understand what went wrong, and all because they want to try and save a few $1,000s and do it themselves because they think they're smart enough to do it. And it's not about intellect. It's about understanding how the industry works, understanding legislation, understanding pricing, understanding negotiation, understanding what constitutes an investment grade property or an investment grade home, and what those attributes are to make sure that you're making a good decision or a smart decision instead of a poor one. And, you know, I see it all the time, just like you hear case studies as well. I see it all the time. You know, I had a couple in here recently. They were looking at 4 different properties or apartments in 4 different locations. They didn't know, they wanted to make sure they were buying a good investment, but fundamentally one of the people in that meeting decided that he was smart enough to figure it out himself. And I said, you know, are you really prepared to risk $650,000 on something that as a foreigner you don't know and understand our legislation, and you're willing just for the sake of a few $1,000s to take that risk? And he said yes. And I went, okay then, you know, good luck with that. What can I say? If it were up to me, everyone should compulsorily use a licensed and qualified buyer's advocate, an independent buyer's advocate. But, you know, legislation hasn't been struck that way, and consumers have been, the buying process has been dumbed down by property spruikers and real estate agents for decades, and consumers like sheep believe everything the selling agent tells them, and yet that person doesn't represent their interests at all. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Miriam. We're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more when we confer on the 21st of August for a webinar to talk about buying in the changing climate that we're currently seeing emerging week by week in Australia. And we're going to be touching on that topic that we've just touched on now, the importance of having good professional advice, a genuine buyer's agent on the team. So thanks for your contribution today, Miriam, and look forward to talking about all these issues in greater detail on the 21st of August. And if people would like to be part of that webinar, you can go to we're certainly going to be sending out information in the coming weeks to let people know about that, but you can go now to the Hotspotting website and sign up for that webinar today. So look forward to speaking to you again then, Miriam.
Thank you, Terry. And I do want to let everyone know that there will be an offer for everyone that attends the webinar. I'm going to give you away a number of chapters in my book for free. So, yeah, come along, attend the webinar, and you'll get access to the first, I think, 3 or 4 chapters in my book at no charge.
Okay. Thanks, Miriam. Nice to get this conversation finally done.
Gotta love technology, Terry.
Technology has not been our friend today, or for the last few weeks, trying to do it. Yeah, let's not go into it.
I think we both lost some hair over that today, Terry.
Well, I lost all of mine. You at least have plenty left. Okay, thanks, Miriam. Talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Bye.
Bye-bye.